Dr. Dalton Smith outlines 7 different types of rest, and her theory is that we have rest deficits in these cognitive areas in our life. We are all familiar with physical rest. We all know we need sleep, even if it is hard to get. And because the majority of people I imagine watching this are knowledge workers, meaning you sit behind a desk, you create ideas or sell things, or you use a computer. You're not manually doing labor throughout the day in order to make money. You are creating something with your brain. Your brain needs to rest also. So I'm going to outline the 6 different types of rest deficits that we may be falling into and what you can do to address them. First up, mental rest. One sign of a mental rest deficit is that you are unable to turn your brain off when it's time to go to sleep. You're overprocessing. You're thinking about what you did that day, what you have to do tomorrow. You just cannot stop thinking. Other signs of a mental rest deficit is that you are forgetful. Maybe you walk into a room intending to do something or grab something and you have no idea why you walked into that room. Or maybe you wanted to go to the store to get some stuff on the way home from work and you had a mental list of 3 to 5 things and you get there and you can only remember 1 or 2 of them. You're just fried. You are mentally unrested. So how do we fix it? The goal when trying to address a mental rest deficit is to clear out your mind. I think Dalton Smith called it like removing the cerebral noise around your brain. One thing you can try is scheduling a break every few hours, and needs to be an intentional, deliberate break away from the computer, away from work. It's meant to slow your brain down and to calm your mind. It doesn't have to be long, it can be a few minutes. You're just taking a step back from thinking about a problem that you're trying to solve at work. The second thing you can try doing is keeping a space to brain dump. So this can be a note in your phone. It also may be helpful to have a notepad by your bed if you have something come up that you need to remember for tomorrow, but you don't want to blind yourself with the light of your phone right before you go to bed. The third thing you can try to do is minimize multitasking as much as possible. Multitasking is one of the biggest lies we've ever been sold. And if you have like 14 tabs open on your screen and you're trying to write an email while watching a YouTube video, while listening to, I don't know, your coworker talk about something, and you have the news on in the background, like you're actually doing 4 things and you're getting nothing done efficiently. Like it may eventually get done, but it took you way too long and it cluttered up your brain. Try to focus on one thing at a time as much as you possibly can. I know it's easier said than done, but it is something that you can intentionally try to do going forward, and it will hopefully make you feel like a lot clearer. And you'll know like, okay, task A is done, let's move on to task B. And it's just this boundary in your brain almost. And my final recommendation is time blocking your calendar with all the tasks that you have to get done for that day. That way it's out of your head. You wrote it down. You're like, okay, this is the schedule. We have a plan. I don't need to think about what's happening next. When my calendar says it's time to stop and switch tasks, it's time to stop and switch tasks. Next up, sensory rest. So I want you to think about your work environment, where your office or where you work in your house. What is the environment like? What are the smells? What is the light situation? What are the sounds? How does the chair feel? All of these things are sensory perceptions. Then add in the technology that we're working with all the time, every day, constantly, with the light and the noise and the 24 browser tabs, and maybe the TV is on in the background, or I don't know, YouTube is playing. All of this leads to sensory overload. An example that really helped me understand sensory overload and sensory rest deficit is this one that Dalton Smith gave in an interview where she talked about a 3-year-old going to a birthday party. And she said, like, this child was super happy going in, like nothing was wrong. Everything went perfectly. Like she was playing with her friend, she got cake, nothing happened. But then at the end of the party, this kid just has a complete temper tantrum. And it's because that child was overstimulated. Now, as an adult, we know that it's inappropriate to have a temper tantrum, but we are feeling it. And if you think about your day, as you go through your day, as things add up and little inconveniences happen, whether it's like you're stuck in traffic or something goes wrong at work or like something doesn't work out perfectly, your fuse gets shorter and shorter. And it is because of that sensory overload. So here's what we can do in order to address sensory rest deficit. One thing you can do is schedule out a portion of the day where you're cutting off like your hearing. So using noise canceling headphones to not even listen to music, just to cancel out the noise around you. Or maybe you can buy some earplugs just to give yourself that reprieve from one of the overwhelming parts of existing in a space. Another thing you can do is similar to the mental rest, is to schedule in times to just close your eyes and take a break. Like, just don't look at a screen, just cut off that visual sensations that you are experiencing for a minute. And if you do this a few times throughout the day, it can be really helpful. You can pair it with, taking a step back from work. It's like a little meditation at your desk. And finally, in order to address your sensory overwhelm, carve out time during the day to not look at a screen at all for a prolonged period of time. Start small, just 15 minutes. It's so difficult, and it has to be so intentional because everything we do is on screens. Next up, we have creative rest. This one is very interesting because I think a lot of people who may have, a job where you're looking at spreadsheets all day don't necessarily think of themselves as creative, but they are. They're being creative. Creativity and using creative energy and thought is about problem solving. It's about approaching things from different angles. It's not just about creating art. So if you spend your days solving any kind of problem, brainstorming ideas, you are engaging in creative work, even if you may not frame it that way in your mind. So how do you go about replenishing that creative energy? Dalton Smith describes creative rest as rediscovering the sense of childlike wonder within us, which I think is lovely. One of the number one ways she says that people feel that is through nature. She says bodies of water are actually really replenishing for people's creativity. It's about feeling reinvigorated in that way. She also says that pet therapy is a really good way of getting that taste of nature in a more domestic environment. She says that can actually feel really rejuvenating for people as well. But one counterintuitive thing she says that people have asked her, what if I go out with my friends and go do a pottery night? Is that getting creative rest? And she says, no, that's actually creative work. She does say that can be restful in its own way, but it's not creative rest. She says that creative rest is when you are appreciating the creative work that you've already done. Addressing creative rest deficit is a feeling. So journaling or just reflecting on what you've done already, what you've created, is a way to replenish that creative rest. And the reason so many of us are experiencing this creative rest deficit is we don't realize that we're actually using any of our creative faculties throughout our day, and we're not allowing ourselves to really sit with that. Now we're going to talk about spiritual rest, which is the ability to connect beyond the mental and the physical. Spiritual rest involves having a sense of belonging and a sense of purpose. It's about being involved in something and engaged in something bigger than yourself in your day-to-day routine. And Dalton Smith says one of the biggest problems with the 9-to-5 and the way that we've structured society is that people just do not feel fulfillment from their jobs. They're just doing it for a paycheck, which is what they have to do. Society literally wouldn't function if we didn't have boring jobs. We need to be able to find that spiritual fulfillment and that rest elsewhere. I think when a lot of people think of the word spiritual, they may also think of religion, and that can be a very obvious way for certain people to feel that fulfillment, is to go through a religious organization that also provides them with a sense of community and a shared focus, and they have a higher power built in, and that it can offer people a lot of reprieve from feeling spiritual fatigue. If you're not super religious, try seeking out community of people with shared interests. It could be about bettering the world, but it could also just be about creating a sense of coming together and a sense of just having something larger than you that you look forward to. And finally, reflect on your purpose. What do you feel drawn in this life to do? And how can you feel like you are doing that more throughout the day? Okay, finally, emotional and social rest deficits. I'm going to talk about these two together because they kind of go hand in hand. People feel like they are experiencing an emotional rest deficit when they fail to be authentic to their emotions. If you think about the 9-to-5 and professionalism, this is almost demanded of us. It's almost impossible to avoid this. In the United States, a frequent greeting that you'll hear is, "Hey, how are you?" They're not actually asking, "How are you?" They're saying hello. If you were to say, "I'm actually not doing too great. I had a fight with my partner last night and it's really weighing on me," that would be breaching a social contract. That would be considered inappropriate for a workplace. But in order to make this other person feel comfortable, you are having to lie, essentially. You're squashing an authentic emotion that you're having in that moment, because that's just what the situation demands. And that's why emotional and social rest deficits go hand in hand. People will experience a social rest deficit when they're interacting with individuals who are requiring effort to engage with that interaction. So if you work in sales, or if you work in a customer service job, or if you're a doctor or a flight attendant, anything to have to do with people during the day, you're performing. You are making sure that you are engaging with this person in an appropriate way. You want to meet their needs. You want to make sure that you are doing your job. But you can't be authentic about the emotion that you're experiencing in that moment most of the time, especially if it's a sensitive topic. You are having to put forward work in order to maintain that professionalism. So that's why these two concepts of emotional and social rest deficits are linked, because frequently the emotional rest deficit comes from the social interaction. So the way you address both of these rest deficits, first, I want you to find a way to honor your emotions. This can be journaling. This can be therapy. You just need to recognize, okay, what I'm feeling is I want to scream right now, and I can't in this situation because I'm in a professional setting. But then you're going to go home and you're going to figure out a way to deal with those feelings. You can write them out, you can call a friend, you can journal, whatever it is, but you need to acknowledge that you are feeling some kind of way. And during the day, you were not able to authentically relay that information to the people you are interacting with. To address social rest deficit, it's important to differentiate between which relationships require a lot of effort on your part and which ones are more rejuvenating and offer you energy rather than taking energy from you. And you have to go through your life and really think about which type of relationships you are putting energy into. So you're going to want to curate your friends and the people that you spend time around, and make sure that the people in your life are pouring into you as much as you're pouring into them. If there are people in your life that are taking, like, you may want to distance yourself from them or address it and see if you can fix it, because that also will deplete you socially and emotionally, because you are doing a lot of labor in that relationship. And then finally, make time for in-person interactions, like not just virtual ones. Sometimes we can just lean into virtual relationships and not actually make time to experience people's energy and, I don't know, touch their hand when they say something funny, or, you know, like really have that in-person face-to-face interaction. It can make a big difference. And then also going back to the whole emotional rest and being authentic with your emotions, when you are meeting with that person and they ask you how things are going, like, be honest. Don't just say good reflexively. Answer like, I'm kind of bummed because I'm feeling under the weather and it was my vacation and now I'm spending it sick and I'm really frustrated. Like, let it out. Be honest. I'm going to call it there. Thank you so much for watching. I'm so grateful that you are here. If you want more, now that you are aware of how to rest, maybe you want to create a really nice evening routine that will help set you up for success into the next day and make you feel more rejuvenated. So you can click on that video, and I hope you enjoy it. And the one thing that will help me so much is if you could like and subscribe and maybe leave a comment. That is what I need right now in order to grow this channel, and I really appreciate you being here. I want to know you exist, so I would love to hear from you. Thank you, and until next time, bye.